Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Random Redshirt podcast. I am Zach, one of the hosts, and the other host is Chris. What's up, Chris?
Hello, everybody. I'm Chris. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Zach, we made it through another week of work in our professional lives, and
Barely.
yeah, we got through. So it is always great to be here with you, my great friend, and then all of our listeners around the world and the interwebs, and still trying to get people in Antarctica. Maybe you have joined, maybe not, but that'd be
That's
wonderful. The
that
goal.
that is a passion project of Chris's to get the Antarctica folks to listen. Hey, maybe some of the penguins down there will listen too. Who knows? We'll do a
Indeed.
special episode on Batman and the Penguin just to get them riled up.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Um, yeah, no, it's great to be here with you as always, and always look forward to this. And it's a great time to get a chance to talk about what we love, what we're passionate about. It's a great break from reality, so to speak, as we get to share. I mean, it's like we talked about before, right? I mean, this is basically us just doing a phone call only over Zoom. I mean,
Mhm.
that's pretty much. I mean, there's a little bit more of a format to it than one of our phone calls, but that's how it started. If you didn't know that, we talked a lot on the phone about this fun stuff that we enjoy, nerdy, geeky, whatever you want to call it, and we decided to record it one day, and here we are, a few years later, still going,
Yeah, absolutely. And it
going
was just,
strong.
yeah, we are. And amazing, it's amazing how much we mutually learn about our deep interests that we've got,
Yeah.
right? And how passionate we feel about either it could be like certain episodes or certain Batman or certain James Bonds or
Yeah.
all of that, right? So it's
All
just
the
yeah.
Jean-Claude Van
Oh,
Damme,
Jean-Claude
I
Van
mean, yeah,
Damme. Yeah, yeah.
you name it.
Oh, I sorry, I just remembered this. My friend let me know. But you talk about Jean-Claude Van Damme, and that made me think about Arnold Schwarzenegger
Mm.
and then James Cameron. but so I learned that they will be releasing 4Ks of The Abyss, Aliens, and True Lies.
I did hear about that, about The
Yeah,
Abyss. My
yeah.
problem is I don't have a 4K TV, so I
Oh,
can't I can't watch it in 4K. I still have an older TV, sort of. Yeah, I mean it's not older, but it's not a 4K TV. I thought it was when I bought it, and then realized it wasn't, and I'm like, it's already up in the wall. I don't want to take it down now.
oh, gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I think those will be must-haves. Like for me, I love True Lies. Maybe we can talk about True Lies sometime.
yeah. True
Yeah,
Lies is a fantastic movie. It's
yeah,
so good.
yeah, yeah. It was,
I
and
wish they would have done a second one. Like
oh
not
yeah.
not now, like not necessarily now. Although there has been talks that Jamie Lee Curtis and Schwarzenegger could do another one, but
Mhm.
I meant like within a matter of a few years of the first one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That would have been cool. I remember going in seeing True Lies in the theater, uh, actually knowing nothing about it, and then I went in and I was just so happy. I was like,
I
oh,
saw True Lies at the drive-in movie theater. How about that?
whoa,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. There are not that many of them left, obviously.
No,
And
there
when
are
you
not.
when you do find them, they're still popular. I think if somebody could invest the money to make a really nice, like up to date, with all the tech kind of drive-in movie theater, the big like 4K or 8K or whatever K screen, and make the tech work, it could be really, really good, really popular. I think it'd do really well. I mean that there I think there's actually a demand for those. There just isn't any really around. Very, very few.
Yeah, that'd be really nice. I have never, if you can believe it, I don't believe I've ever been to a drive-in movie theater. So
What?
yeah,
Man,
so that'd be a goal.
I don't know if they have any where you live anywhere,
Well, yeah,
but probably not. I
there,
know they probably don't. I don't remember there being any up there when I was up there.
there's not,
Yeah.
not here. I
Well,
think,
there you go.
yeah,
Chris, there's a new venture. New venture for you. You could open up the very first one. It's just closed in the wintertime.
it closed in the
So,
wintertime. Or
yeah.
maybe that'd be cool. Well, right? You could have like watching your drive-in movie and it's snowing at the same time.
Ooh, Christmas movies, even better.
Christmas movie. Yeah, yeah,
You could be onto something, Chris. I think you
maybe.
could be onto something. Maybe in an alternate universe, which brings
Mm,
us our
yeah.
topic of the day, right? You like that segue there. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, so we're back to the mirror universe. We're jumping back as we just finished our look at the time of this recording of our review of Enterprise. Yeah, I forgot to tell you this, Chris, but I thought I was only in season 1 of my rewatch of Enterprise, because I going back and doing it again. And I'm actually farther along than I thought. I watched a couple episodes this evening, and I'm actually over halfway through season 2.
Nice.
So I'm a little farther along than I thought, but Um, it's been great getting back into that show, rewatching. There's several episodes I just completely forgot about. I didn't remember them at all. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't remember that. Like I just watched one today called Future Tense,
Yeah.
and where they recover this pod that looks like it's from the future, and they have there's this what looks like it'd be a human in there, and he's got all this genetics of different species. So they learn that, okay, well now we know it's possible that a Vulcan and a human and a Rigelian and all these other, I think it was Rigelian or something else was in there. They could cross pollinate. So very interesting. And then the Suliban were after him. The
Yeah.
Tholians were after them. It was a pretty interesting episode. I don't remember that episode at all.
Oh man, that was cool. That was cool. There were some creepy ones from Enterprise too. I remember one where they discovered this ship, and they couldn't get any readings or communication from the ship, and they boarded the ship, and they found these aliens, like they were either like hanging or in suspense, and
Oh
they were being
yeah.
their blood was being drained. It was something like that.
I think that was in season 1 too.
Yeah,
Pretty sure. Yeah.
that
Yeah,
was a
that was
good
that
one. That was
that
creepy.
one and the zombie Vulcans. There are definitely some Halloween spooky episodes for
Mhm.
sure in Enterprise.
Yeah,
Um,
zombie bull.
yeah, so we are jumping back to the mirror universe, and we the last time we did the mirror universe, we looked at the very first
Mhm.
mirror episode, which is Mirror Mirror from TOS. And it's interesting when I was watching this episode crossover from D Space Nine. They actually go back and reference what happened multiple times in the mirror universe episode from TOS.
Yeah, they do. Not only was it was reference to Major Kira from the Intendant. She said, I think she actually said Spock, and maybe actually said Kirk, and then
Yes.
Kira didn't know who that was, but Bashir knew who it was like immediately, and he was like, "Oh,
Right.
Kirk," and then he's like, "Yeah, we studied this at the academy." So, um, but it was great that they reference it, right? Because second this is only the second episode of the Mirror Universe, if I'm getting it correct.
Yeah, no, you're yeah,
Yeah,
of this mirror universe,
yeah.
because you see stuff like in TNG, right, where there's like those future looks and stuff, but that's not a
Mhm.
different universe. That's just on the same timeline. It's not in an alternate universe.
I thought it was genius that they brought this in Deep Space Nine, right? Because they didn't do this in Next Generation, and so whoever came in and thought of the idea and said, "Hey, maybe we should do this, bring back the Mirror Universe and reference it," was
Yeah,
genius. It was because this was like in Deep Space Nine. I think there are several or a good handful of Mirror Universe episodes that
yeah.
are
I
terrific.
think was there 5 or 6 maybe. I can't remember
Yeah,
off the top of my head, but
yeah,
there's several, and then they carry that. They also carry the same mirror universe over into Enterprise,
yeah.
right? In the Mirror Darkly Part 1 and 2, which we discussed in our Part 2 look of Enterprise. So be sure to go check that out. And then they also carry that mirror universe over into Discovery as well.
Yeah. Yep. Which means
So
we'll have to talk about it, Discovery, at some point, right?
yeah, we'll have
Yes.
to talk about those mirror episodes
Yeah.
because it's all part of the same thing. This idea of the Terrans, right, and everything.
Yeah.
We're gonna get into that, but all right, Chris. So let's jump into this and let's get this episode going. So DS9 crossover. Always great to be back in the DS9 universe, so to speak. The
Yes.
DS9 show makes me happy for sure. So I don't remember what they said Kira and Bashir were coming back from, but they're coming back on some trip, and they enter the wormhole. And right as they're entering the wormhole, they have some kind of like, I think, plasma leak or something
Yeah.
like that in their ship. And they get into the wormhole. All of a sudden, there's this flash and they get real dizzy. They don't know where they're at. And then they come out of the wormhole and there's no station.
Yeah. DS9's not there. And then but what is there is like a Klingon ship that
Yeah.
kind of gets them sort of like, oh no, they Klingon ship comes and then two Klingons board. And they're really nervous, of course, but when the Klingons come on, they get a look at Major Kira and they're like, oh, we're sorry. We didn't know we didn't know it was like you on the ship. So
Yeah. And we don't know why they're so frightened of her yet. Right.
yeah,
We
yeah,
don't know that there's actually another, they don't know where they're at. They think they're back, but the station's not there or something. And then they see some Klingons, which isn't out of the ordinary.
yeah, yeah. And so they escort Kira and Bashir like back to Tarek Nor, right? Because now Tarek Nor is orbiting Bajor, I believe,
Yep.
right there. And
It's
so
back to where it was
yeah,
before the pilot episode, right? In the pilot episode, the station is moved closer to the wormhole,
Yeah.
and
It,
that's where it stays.
yeah, that's where it stays. It had been a while since I watched DS9, so this the first opening moments of the episode, where there was some interaction and interplay between Bashir and Kira. I really really liked, because I forgot like how much of a character Bashir can be. Right? He's such a character, and he totally annoyed Kira. Um, so I
Yeah,
that was funny. That was
because
funny.
it was funny. I think Kira wanted some peace and quiet. She wanted to listen to some music, and Bashir just wants to talk. It's evident because he even says something to the effect of like, "Oh, well, eventually Miles and I became friends, and you know, he wants to get to know her more on a friend level, right?" And she's
Yeah.
like, "You better stick to Dax." He's like, "Oh no, I didn't mean that. I meant like, just get to know each other, have dinner or something like that." And so Bashir actually has the computer play some Bajoran music,
Yeah.
uh, by Tor Jalan, Tor J- Tor Jalan, I think is how you say it.
Oh.
And he's one of Bajor's greatest composers. And Kira's really surprised by this. She's, you know, kind of shocked actually that Bashir has a taste for Bajoran music, but it's something that
Yeah.
he was interested in when he got to the station. He wanted to, kind of soak it all in. And this is where, they start this kind of back and forth. And then all of a sudden, that's where things go wrong.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, he he totally annoys Kira, and that's funny. But yeah, they totally going through the wormhole. They have the plasma leak, and they end up in the mirror universe, and they're escorted to Tarek Nor. And when they get off of the station, I think the intendant, or when they get onto the station, I think the intendant also comes to greet her, wants to
She
see her.
does
Yeah.
after a moment because when they first get off, they find Garrick and some Klingons.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kira's like, Garrick, what are you doing? What are you doing or whatever? And he's like, how do you know who I am? And of course, because he looks different to her because in their universe, Garrick is plain simple Garrick. He's just a tailor, right? And he wears
Yeah.
normal clothing. In this, he's got a Cardassian uniform on.
Yeah.
So things are not adding up. Right away, you can tell Kira and Bashir realize something is amok, something is not quite right.
Yep, something is amiss. And then Bashir, he's taken away and said, "Hey, he's got to go to the go to labor for the ore processing duty." Um,
Yeah,
and
because he's a
then
Terran, right?
yeah, because he's a Terran, and we don't know this yet, but Terrans have pretty much lost their prestige in this mirror universe, and now they're reduced to manual labor.
Yeah, because in the Mirror episode of Toss, when they go over, the Terrans are the ones that are ruling with an iron fist, right? The
Mhm.
Terrans are the ones that are the dominant force in the sector.
Yeah,
And they are ruthless, and they in in a we kind of learn through the intendant the way that the Terrans treated other species, right? They enslaved some species. They ruled with that iron fist. And we begin to learn as this episode goes on that things are not exactly how they were the last time there was a crossover when Kirk went over to this side.
yeah, that's right. Because I believe it was the intendant that talks a bit about Spock, and then how Spock was in the mirror side of the universe. Spock trying to preach reforms of the Terran Empire and teach the Terran Empire a different way. But like when he was doing that, he kind of weakened the Terran Empire like as a whole, so that they didn't have the same strength and same dominance. And then they fell victim to that, right? So then there was an alliance that was formed by the seems like the alliance formed by the Klingons and the Cardassians and
Yep.
the Bajorans, right? And they kind of
Yeah.
they
The
took
Bajorans
over.
came into it.
Yeah,
Yeah, which is interesting because you have Bajorans and Cardassians in an alliance together where in the Prime universe, the Cardassians enslaved the Bajorans, right? Through their occupation of
yeah,
Bajor.
yeah. Now it's like the
Very
Terrans,
different.
yeah, Terrans that are occupied, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Very,
Nice.
very, very, very different. And it's interesting. Yeah, the intendant talks about Kirk how the Kirk from the Prime universe came
Mhm.
over, right? And he had a very profound impact and effect on Mirror Spock.
Mhm.
And that's what really changed this whole thing. So had Kirk not meddled around in the Mirror universe, then maybe Kira or maybe Bashir, at least Bashir, wouldn't be in the situation he's in.
And look how much like influence Kirk has. Whatever universe he goes to, man.
He's always mucking things up, man. He's
Yeah.
always messing it up.
Yeah. Just got yeah. He's always got to be the one. That's okay.
Yeah, exactly. But when the Terran Empire went through that reform because of Spock, according to the intendant, the Terrans then became very easy to be conquered by
Mhm.
this new alliance, right? That had been stood up between the Klingons and the Cardassians. The Klingons and the Cardassians saw the weakening of the Terran Empire and took advantage of it.
Yeah.
And then they brought the Bajorans in, and so D Space Nine obviously is not DS9; it's still Terok Nor, but it's under the command of the intendant, and Garrick is the first officer. I mean, that is so complete opposite, right? You have Garrick and the intendant in charge of this station.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we do. I really felt like when we say mirror universe, the prime universe Garrick and the mirror universe Garrick I totally see that, right? Because that you always feel like, yeah, Garrick as the tailor, he's got this mysterious past, and he was involved in some secretive things. But when you see Garrick on the mirror universe, I'm thinking, yeah, like that could totally be Garrick in this situation because we learn yeah, he's pretty devious. He's pretty
Yeah.
ambitious, so he likes to he's got a plan. He's always scheming. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the mirror universe Garrick is the Garrick that he kind of wants to be,
Yeah.
or maybe he was at one point when he was part of the Obsidian Order,
Yeah.
and now not so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, in his universe, he's been relegated to being this tailor, exiled from Cardassia because a bunch of the Cardassians didn't like him.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Um, you know what? I thought it, it was it wasn't funny at the time, but I think it's a little bit funny now. But when Bashir gets taken down to do the manual labor in the ore processing center of the station, so he has this interaction with Odo, and Bashir's the new labor that's come, and Odo's like meeting him, and then Odo has some stern words for Bashir. Bashir totally doesn't understand what's going on, and Odo's
Right?
just slapping him left and right. Slap. He's like, rule number 14. Do you remember rule number 14?
Yeah.
And Bashir
Yeah.
just doesn't know what's happening. So,
Yeah, this Odo is very different
mhm.
than the Odo we meet in the Prime universe, right? That we know and love in the Prime universe. I mean,
Yeah.
Odo is a very beloved character in Star Trek and amongst the DS9 fans. He's very different. He's a little bit of a slave driver in this case, right? He's a guy who's really going to get things done. The intendant even makes a comment later on after things happen to Odo that no one could run things as efficiently as him,
Yeah.
which is kind of a characteristic of him as the uh the investigator that he is in the Prime universe, right?
Yeah.
He is efficient. He's that's just part of who he is. So in that sense, there's some carryover from Prime universe to Mirror Odo.
Yeah, which is good because whatever he does, he's going to be the best at whatever he does, and that's totally Odo,
Yeah.
right? Whether he is a constable, an inspector, um, or
Yeah.
the foreman of all these laborers, he's going to make sure things are done efficiently and effectively. Totally.
Exactly. But this Mirror episode, very similar to Mirror Mirror in the sense that if you're in a position of authority or leadership, or you have or power, I guess maybe not leadership's the right word. That sounds
Mhm.
like you're, taking care of people, but in a position of authority or power, you're not safe. You have to watch your back at all costs because we learn very quickly when Garrick talks to Kira Prime universe Kira on the side. He talks about taking her out and replacing her with Kira,
Yeah.
and then Kira eventually being able to leave once, things have kind of settled down, and then he takes over and he becomes kind of the controller. That was the same way in Mirror Mirror. There was always this thought with the way things worked there amongst the Terran Empire that the captain or the leader, the head guy, always had to watch his back because someone was always coming for him. And they were
Yeah.
always there. There was this constant maneuvering up, and you were having to kill the people off in front of you to get up.
Yeah, that
So
was a great point you said. That's great that you remember it because to get promoted, you had to assassinate your
exactly.
your your yeah, your supervisor. Your
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Oh man.
So you see that here in the Alliance, in this
Yeah.
Mirror Universe episode crossover, where Garrick has been plotting to take out the Intendant for some time. He knows that, if he's going to take over, he's got to take her out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. But it's not successful.
Yeah. And very interesting. I will say the Intendant, I find the Intendant fascinating. She's a very complex character, very complex, right? But very, very creepy
Mm-hmm.
too,
Yeah.
because once, as soon as she sees Prime Universe Kira, she instantly falls in love with herself because it's
Yeah.
herself, and she's fascinated. Even Garrick says, you're all she's talked about. She can't talk about anything else but you. She's obsessed with you.
Yeah. I also thought that was very interesting. And um, Nana Visitor did an excellent job playing the Intendant because so Major Kira, um, coming from where Major Kira comes from, right? She was a resistance fighter, uh, kind of came from the occupation, was involved in guerrilla warfare, very serious, right?
Yeah.
She's very serious. I would say Major Kira probably doesn't smile like a lot, you know?
Well, yeah, because there's an episode in DS9 where she has to be ordered by Bashir to take time off to
Yeah,
go enjoy herself because she's so caught up in the work.
yeah,
So you're absolutely
yeah,
right. It's a very good point you make about Prime Universe Kira.
yeah, exactly. And then the Mirror Universe Intendant, you're right. She's always got this in the back of her mind. You're wondering like, what is she thinking? But she's got this almost she smiles and she's giggling and it's almost like this uncomfortable smile and
Yeah.
uncomfortable like giggling 'cause she feels like um she feels like she's doing the Terrans a favor and saying, "Hey, I'm an advocate for you and why are you acting like you're acting?" um and she takes pleasure in Cisco's character, that captain. She takes
Yep.
pleasure in the captain, and you see her, she's um enjoying like a bath in one of the scenes, like she's enjoying in a bath, like a bath, and that's not something you'd ever see Major Kira do, right? Because Major
Right.
Kira, she didn't have that, right? That luxury. So this is like very, very, very opposite. So
Yeah,
really cool. Yeah.
you're 100% right in that. Very, very good points you make there.
Yeah.
Um, and also too, so when not only does Bashir meet the Mirror Universe Odo,
Mhm.
he also meets the Mirror Universe O'Brien, my guy.
Yeah.
And I would say of maybe all the Mirror Universe characters that we meet in this episode, kind of feel like O'Brien, or Smiley as Cisco calls him for a nickname, uh, he's maybe most like himself. I mean, obviously he's a coward and you know, and very, very like reclusive and doesn't want to, does just wants to tinker, wants to be left alone and tinker. So yes, there are definitely differences. O'Brien in the Prime Universe is the guy that fought at Setlik 3 and the massacre at Setlik 3 and fought the Cardassians, and he's a war guy, but he's also incredibly knowledgeable in fixing things. O'Brien here is incredibly good at tinkering and fixing things too. So he is definitely different, but I definitely think that there is a lot more similarities with him than maybe some of the other characters we meet.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Because um he's approachable and he's amenable to like reason,
Yeah.
actually. And then when Bashir is like talking to him, and when he learns like uh, when he finally learns like, hey, what's going on, and then he goes, oh yeah, I have all this potential, or I could have been this, and you, yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. Like, yeah, he's the most alike, in both universes,
Yeah.
and yeah,
And we see that even more in future mirror episodes of DS9,
mm,
which we'll get to as
hmm,
we jump in and out of the mirror universe for as part of our spotlight series. We'll kind of see the evolution of these characters over the course of the next several mirror episodes that they're in as we get to them.
yeah,
So very interesting. But yeah, O'Brien is this tinkerer. He Bashir begins to tell him what it's like on his side and how O'Brien, the Miles O'Brien he knows is the chief of operations, and he's got a wife and
yeah,
he's got kids, and he's like, wow, this is really incredible. Like, man, look at me, chief of operations. Like I make something of myself over there. I have this opportunity, and it really fascinates O'Brien. He's still reluctant to help and do anything, but at least he begins to see, maybe there's a way I could get over there and escape this awful life I'm currently living.
yeah, yeah. And he definitely tries, and that's what I mean. He's helping. He ends up trying to help Bashir, and trying to escape. They're not successful. They're captured by the intendant and her forces, but I like that he, in his own way, befriends Bashir, right? And and is helping Bashir escape. So that was great. That was great.
Yeah, I
Um,
also found too, Chris, the Quark in the Mirror Universe. Quark
mhm.
over here is also very much like himself
Yeah,
in the Prime Universe, right? He's not the kind of guy who is going to do anything uh openly to get himself in trouble. He's always in the shadows doing things right sneakily, and him and Odo have that absolutely just incredible, you know, cat and mouse game they play, right? Like Tom and
yeah,
Jerry almost kind of back and forth, where Quark tries to see what he can get away with, and Odo tries to catch him in the act all the time and everything. But in this universe, he's just a simple bartender, right? He's just trying to make a living, but you also know he is trying to help the Terrans too. We learned that.
yeah. And so this is where you feel like you understand that Quark has a good heart. He kind of hides it, right? But he's got a good heart in both universes. He's got a good heart, and
Yeah.
he's yeah, he's trying to help the Terrans here because he feels like terrible for their situation, and he gets captured, unfortunately, and I guess, yeah, I guess he is executed in this mirror universe. They
As far as we know, yes,
Yeah,
he's taken off and executed after he's caught, and then Kira's the one that tells him to, you know,
yeah,
take him out or whatever. Yeah, even in the Prime universe, Chris, we also know that for as much of a kind of a weasel,
mhm,
kind of shady character that Quark can be, because everything he does is always about trying to make profit, right? He wants to be known, and he's trying so desperately to be a traditional Ferengi, right? Someone who makes latinum and is not just this bartender. He's trying to do all these things, and of course, a lot of them are illegal.
yeah,
But we see that there's an episode, I don't know if you remember, Chris, where I believe it's his cousin Gala invites him. I think it's his cousin's name. Invites him to start selling weapons
mhm,
to bad people, and they don't actually bring weapons on board the station. They show them in the holodeck, and then they're all done off station, so he can't technically get in trouble. And there's this big arms deal about to go down, and he ends up bringing both sides of this long war together, and they kill off a bunch of each other. And he does he could have just kept going down that path, selling it, making buco dollars, although he had a lot of debts to pay off first. But he doesn't. He finds a way to end it, because he realizes that what he's doing is causing millions and millions of people to die.
yeah,
And he has a conscience. We realize, yeah, for as shady as Quark can be, he's got a conscience, and we see that also in this Mirror Universe episode.
Yeah, that's a great point. That is a great point with Quark. And yeah, I thought he shined pretty well in this Universe episode because when you realize, oh, he's the one helping the Terrans, like, oh, good for
Yeah.
Quark.
Yeah, and how
So,
we found this out was they found a stowaway. They
mhm,
brought this
yeah,
Terran in. The Klingons find him, and then they link it back to Quark, and then Quark's like, "Oh, I didn't do that," but then they go interrogate him, beat him up, and then they bring him to the Intendant, I believe, right? And then she's the one that's like, "Yeah, no, I'm sorry, Quark. Like this is yeah." And then
yeah,
enough's enough because it interrupts her little party.
yeah,
Her party's interrupted that she had this whole thing thrown for herself, and her her counterpart
yeah.
Kira's all dressed up in the same dress, and it's the Intendant is nothing if not a massive narcissist. I mean, in
Yeah,
her
yeah,
position,
yeah,
it kind of makes sense for her to be a
uh,
narcissist in her current position, right?
yeah. Um, Almost like she reminds me of the Intendant. Reminds me of okay, not Snow White, but who's the antagonist in Snow White? It's the
And the witch, right?
yeah, the witch.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost a little bit reminds me of that. Who's the
Yeah.
fairest of them all? And it's like, well, myself
Yeah, right.
in the
Yeah.
universe. Yeah,
No, not narcissistic at all,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
So very interesting. The party goes on, and then but so Bashir's crawling his way, right?
mhm.
He's able to escape. There's a big blast in the ore processing center. The O'Brien is trying to fix it in one of the junctions, buried deep in the station. Bashir is able to escape. He kills Odo, just blasts him to pieces.
Yeah, blows apart. Shoots the phaser. Yeah, Odo totally like blows apart.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was
100%.
yeah,
And then he escapes. He's able to
yeah.
help get a bunch of the Terrans out. He escapes, and then he finds because he should know the station somewhat, right? He lives there. And then he finds a junction. He crawls in the wall, comes across Smiley or O'Brien, and is able to convince O'Brien to help him,
Mhm.
get out of there. He doesn't quite know all the inner workings of the station the way O'Brien does. And then O'Brien takes him, but unfortunately, the two of them are caught
Mhm.
by the Klingons, and they're brought to the Intendant's party. And that's where the questioning begins.
Yeah,
I found the I found some of the questions interesting, and then I found some of the responses by O'Brien interesting as well. When he talks about um they get caught, and he talks about, hey, like this guy over here, he tells me about this world that I can that the other me's living, and this world where I've got a family, and I'm this chief of operations, and I just wanted something better for my life as a Terran. And that's when the Intendant goes, well, not for you, Mr. O'Brien. And she informs him that well, Bashir may have, this guy may have been saying he's going to take him with you, but he is going to take you with him, just not where you thought he'd be taking you, because
mhm.
they want to, get him cut off on that in that aspect.
Yeah,
Yeah, very, very interesting. In fact, so this is actually the quote. It's right off of Memory Alpha. I like this quote that O'Brien says. He says, "This man's a doctor where he comes from, and then there's an O'Brien there, just like me, except he's some kind of high up chief of operations, and they're Terrans. Can you believe that? Maybe it's a fairy tale he made up, but it started me thinking how each of us might have turned out had history been just a little different. I wanted to take him with me, or I wanted him to take me with him because." Whatever it's like, wherever he's from, it's got to be better than this. There's got to be something better than this. And Chris, I'm going to go deep for a second here,
yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Just for a
Please,
second.
please go deep.
It got me thinking. Every decision we make in life, sometimes even the smallest decisions can have huge lasting effects on our lives.
Mhm.
Um, and I think about that myself, like, well, what would my life look like had I done this, or had I chosen this, or had my career path been different, right? Had I not come to Alaska, had I gone somewhere else, like all these little things. that makes me think as O'Brien saying this, right? And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, like how might I have turned out had history been a little bit different? Right? I look back on my life and there's several forks in the road where this really literally the smallest
Mhm.
little thing had been different. My life could have turned out much different than what it is right now. Not
Yeah.
necessarily worse or better, just different. And it really had me thinking. I don't know if Miles's little speech there had you thinking that kind of stuff, but it really made me think, wow, like I wonder what my life would have been like had something just been a little bit different in my history.
Oh, that is deep and that's beautiful. And this, I was gonna say these lines that were spoken by O'Brien that you just that you shared, this was like my favorite part of the episode, right? I thought these
Same.
were yeah.
Yes. Same.
I mean, these were beautiful. Like when the intendant goes to O'Brien, she's like, first of all, the way they wrote this episode, they had it on many levels because O'Brien's a theta, right? And I guess that
Yeah.
the theta is the kind of the top tier, well behaved slave, essentially.
Yeah. They're
But
given a little more freedom, I think, too, to be able to
yeah,
move about and do things because they're more trusted, right?
yeah, more trusted, exactly. So there was a lot of kind of depth of thought and sophisticated thinking and the saying, hey, we're gonna assign the Terrans like different levels, where they go like alpha, beta, but all the way to theta, but essentially just giving them levels, not giving them an identity, but just saying, hey, here's your designation. So when the intendant goes, like, why would you do that, O'Brien? You're a theta. Like, why would you do that? You're so good, you're so trusted. And when I was looking at O'Brien's face and how he's gonna respond, because he says very quietly, do you really want to know, intendant? He says
Mm-hmm.
it like very quietly and very res- respectfully. And then when he shares what you shared, I was like, wow, it was an extremely intelligent and thoughtful answer that kind of spoke to inside of himself, like, oh, like who could I be? What potential could I have? Like if things were a little bit different, what kind of person would I be and what could I achieve? Um, so that also got me thinking about because I had been reading Batman and philosophy. I'm sorry, I'm going on some tangents,
No, no, it's all right. Good.
but the idea between um free will and choice and then determinism,
Yeah.
what things are determined, and there are some modes of thinking and uh really scientific thinkers that think about free will, that think about determinism, that um and those are really fascinating to read, right? Because you can apply that to this episode, and apply that to the mirror universe, where like, hey, if you think about determinism, like going, oh well, he didn't have any choice, this kind of wound up like where he was. And yes, his uh his circumstances are like terrible and dire. um or the opposite, or somewhere in between of the free will, and that, yeah, you can make conscious decisions, and then having that that ability to have free will makes us each responsible, right, for
Right.
our conscious decisions.
Yeah.
um so I was thinking about that when I was watching this episode, because when O'Brien said that, and what you shared is like, yeah, what could it be if history was a little bit different? I was like, oh,
It's my favorite line from this episode, but
yeah,
his little speech here, right? When he says, "Yeah, had history been just a little bit different, and it's got to be better than this. There's got to be something better than this." And so that's kind of where it had me thinking, like, well, yeah, I mean, how different will my life be if I had made just a couple of different choices, right? Just some minor tweaks of things. Even one choice could completely alter. And this goes into the idea of temporal mechanics and like all that kind of stuff, right? Of you know, uh, getting back to a little bit of predestiny
yeah,
versus versus free will and stuff. It's very interesting. We could dive really deep into even deeper into that, but
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
it's awesome to think through because I think O'Brien says what all the other Terrans are thinking in that moment.
Yeah.
Right? He's almost becoming like a representative for the Terrans in that moment.
Hmm.
And who better than the man himself,
That's
Miles Edward O'Brien? I mean, who better? I
right.
mean, it's just one of many reasons why I love this character so much. He's just great in so many ways.
Yeah.
And even his mirror universe self is pretty fantastic. So um, it was a sticking for me. It definitely stuck pretty well. That line, that quote that I read. But the attendant, yeah, nice try there, O'Brien. You're not gonna get me to. She's fed up at this point, right? With what's going on, she's fed up that Bashir killed Odo. He was one of a kind, only one of his kind, and everything ran so efficiently and blah blah. So she tells them to get hauled off, and obviously they escape.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a whole thing, and I did find it interesting too, Chris, how Major Kira, Prime Kira, wanted to use a transporter because that's how the first accident occurred to get back,
Hmm.
and how they disabled all the transporters in order to, they didn't disable them, they modified them to ensure that that would never happen again. So again, we harken back to Toss
Yeah.
in that episode. There was so much reference in that episode. I thought the writers did a wonderful job, and I know we didn't say this in the beginning, but this episode was directed by David Livingston, who I believe has directed the most episodes of Star Trek of anybody else.
Okay.
He's a fantastic director. He's been on Shuttlepod Show. He's an incredible director, and he's directed some of the absolute best episodes of Star Trek.
Oh,
And this was very well done. This episode
okay.
was.
That is cool to know. That is very cool to know. And you're right, absolutely right. Going back and tying it back to the transporter, um, was a perfect thing to do. And Intendant Kira was kind of funny because she's like, "Why didn't you ask me? I would
Yeah,
have told you. Like, why didn't you come ask me? I would have told you that, silly."
yeah. As if like if you just ask and you shall receive kind of thing.
Yeah,
She's trying to make it seem like, well, if you had just come to me, but we all know that probably wouldn't have happened.
yeah. And Major Kira says it perfectly. Like when she's looking at the intendant, she's like, I'm a little afraid of you. She says something like that.
Yeah, that's
uh,
true. Yeah.
yeah. Um, can we talk about Cisco a little bit? Like,
Yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
was I was actually just gonna bring
Oh
him
yeah,
up, but yeah, very interesting, right? How and I'll let you run with this, Chris, but very
yeah,
interesting how in this universe, so he's a Terran as well.
yeah,
He's probably above the Theta because he just kind of has his own gang and he goes out and does like the will of the intendant. So she gives him free reign over everything. He's kind of like a hitman, right? Him and his little squad. He's very different because he is very self-centered. He's very, uh, you know, I'm gonna do whatever I need to do to look out for my own hide. He's not like the Captain Cisco we know in the Prime universe.
yeah. He's not. I can't believe how well Avery Brooks like played this mirror universe of Cisco because
Yeah,
this
wonderfully.
yeah, he comes in and his his expression in his eyes and his he's got this maniacal laugh and like
Yeah,
right, he's going around and you're just like, okay, wow, this guy is he's I don't want to say, we I don't think he was evil, right? But it's like, okay, you're instantly uncomfortable with him.
right.
Um, you you don't know where you stand with him. You just feel like he could do anything to you, like at that moment. Um, and and I'm not, at least when I watch this episode, I'm not sure if it's putting on a facade. If something is in the back there and he's doing this all as a facade, or if it's truly okay. This is how he is, and he's maniacal, and he's crazy, and um he's a little bit evil to be there because
Yeah,
yeah, he's the intendant's, like, I guess you're right, you're hitman, making sure everything goes fine around the station, and the intendant's, for lack of a better word, like pet, I guess you would say. And
I was just gonna say, yeah,
yeah,
like a little toy almost, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. And you get the sense that he doesn't like that, right? So, um, because you see some expressions where he's there and she's like, and he's thinking, okay, is she done with me? What does she want now?
Yep.
Um, and I really like that, and I especially like it because I don't quite remember the follow up DS9 Mirror Universe episodes, so I'm gonna go back to it, and it's gonna be nice because I'm kind of seeing this fresh right now. But
Yeah.
because I'm seeing it fresh, I'm like, I don't know I don't know what to think about him. Like, where does he stand? I just know he looks like crazy, and they just did
Yeah.
a Avery did a great job with him.
Well, the one thing we learn here is that when the intendant, wants to have Bashir and O'Brien taken away, you can see what O'Brien says in that little segment I read
Mm.
has an effect on Cisco, because Cisco and his little group end up taking control of the situation. They take them out of there. They kind of they get the Klingons to disarm and whatever else. I can't remember specifically what happens, and then they take off
Yeah,
with the two of them. They shoot the sensor or whatever above the door. It closes the door in Quark's bar, or what used to be Quark's bar. Maybe
yeah,
it's not anymore, right? But in the bar area, and then they take off and they take Kira and Bashir to the
shuttlecraft.
location,
Yeah,
yeah, the location where their shuttle was, right? And they're able to get away. But and I love what he says, where when O'Brien's like, "Hey, you think you got like room for me and your crew, or whatever?" He's like, "I can always use the Tinkerer, Smiley,"
yeah,
or something like that. I think it was wonderful. And so you see some of that relationship that we're so accustomed to in the Prime universe, right? Because we know Cisco is fond of O'Brien. He comes to O'Brien's aid quite frequently. All the times that O'Brien is put through the ringer, as we know in the Prime universe of DS9. Um, so I love the way the episode ends, right?
mm,
Where obviously they get away, but the fact that now O'Brien has a fighting chance, right?
yeah.
He's now joined this group. It's evident that Smiley and Cisco and his ragtag band of I don't know, space pirates or whatever you want
Hmm.
to call them, right? Uh, now are going to be able to do something about it, right? No more of this, being controlled by the intendant and the alliance. They want to take control of themselves and maybe help out their fellow Terrans.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. I I do like how it ends and how they get away and going through the wormhole again, and I guess reproducing the plasma leak again to go through the wormhole, and then
Yeah.
and when they
Well, I
come
think
up,
they must have still been leaking or having some issues anyways, because it never got fixed, right? They just
yeah,
showed up, but they never fixed the shuttle, so it must have just still been an issue.
yeah. I guess you're right. Must have still been an issue. And then when they come out the other side, we've got Cisco and O'Brien on the actual Deep Space Nine going, "Where you guys been?" And you got Bashir and Major Kira just kind of look at the camera going, "Oh, we have a story to tell you."
But yeah,
Good
but
look
what
at
I
it.
but what
Yeah.
yeah, but what I love is Kira's quote where she says, "We've got ships from here to New Bejor." Oh no, um, Cisco says, "We've got ships from here to New Bejor out looking for you. Where have you been?" And she says, "Through the Looking Glass, Commander," which is interesting because "Through the Looking Glass" is the name of another DS9 Mirror Universe episode.
Oh,
It's like a future Mirror Universe episode in
okay.
DS9.
That was
So
cool.
like a little foreshadowing there, which is
Yeah,
really cool. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. They did a good. So, yeah, I mean, they did a good job setting up this, I guess, mirror universe arc
Yeah.
storyline.
Well, yeah. So I found this on Memory Alpha, Chris, that I thought was really interesting. So Michael Piller was one of the creators of DS9. Him and Rick Berman. Unfortunately, Michael's not around, but Michael was like the number one, like the second in command behind Rick Berman when it came to Star Trek. So this and Michael Piller, from what I've been told, was like when he spoke, Gene Roddenberry listened.
Mm,
He was a very, very well respected guy. And so Michael Pillar, and I'm reading this off of Memory Alpha here. He said, we've been pitched Mirror Mirror sequels since TNG began. And I wasn't interested, but I couldn't get away from the fact that it would be interesting to know what happened after Mirror Mirror finished. I couldn't escape the idea that Kirk's influence in the world that he left might have been profound and changed history, which we know from the intendant it did. What would be more of a gross violation of the Prime Directive, Ira Stephen Bear said, what if he actually screwed things up? Spock listened to what he said, and then they turned this evil empire into a much more gentle empire that was conquered and taken over by the Klingons, the Cardassians, and others. I was watching Schindler's List, and I was thinking if I were a little older, I could have been in one of those camps in Poland. If Germany had won the war, I would not be here doing what I'm doing today. I guarantee you. I was very pleased with the way the script turned out. So, a couple interesting quotes from two guys that were so incredibly important to DS9 even being a thing, and then it being as successful as it was. Very fascinating, Chris, that you had somebody like Michael Pillar who's like, we had done these like, follow-on ideas for Mirror Mirror, never really came to fruition, and then they're finally like, you know what happened? Let's dive back into this, and that's what we see in this episode of them continuing that concept that happened in Mirror Mirror, which again, if you have not watched our deep dive of Mirror Mirror from TOS, please go back and watch or listen to it. You can find it on your favorite podcast platform, and you can also find it on our YouTube channel. So yeah.
What they wrote was fascinating. So does this mean, because they wrote about Kirk in the Prime Directive, does this essentially mean that Captain Kirk has the most gross violation of the of the Prime Directive,
water out
of the Prime Directive ever? Because he not only changed the course of a planet or a civilization, but an entire universe. So Captain Kirk holds the record.
He has to
for the hugest Prime Directive violation ever in the history of the history of histories.
Now, we're not going to count the JJ movies, but he also does that in the JJ movies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, I would probably agree that he does. I mean, Picard had his fair share of Prime Directive violations, but it's almost like violating the Prime Directive is almost a requirement to be a captain in Star Trek. I mean, is it not? I mean, come on, tell me it's not.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Kirk and Picard definitely were the two biggest ones. Janeway had some. There wasn't a Prime Directive when Archer was flying around, so that wasn't really. We have to really worry about that. Cisco, I be honest with you, I don't really remember much in the way of Prime Directive violations. Somebody could be snarking, come back and go, well, they never went anywhere. That's bullcrap. They did, but you know what I mean. Like, I would agree with you though, Chris. I think that the biggest gross violations of the Prime Directive had to be Kirk.
Yeah, absolutely. That is funny. They had a great point right there. What when I also think about the Mirror Universe and the Cisco and the Prime Universe and the Mirror Universe and Kira and Spock and O'Brien, I like that the Mirror Universe version is just you take a trait from the individual, right? And it's like they have the same traits. But what would we look like? Like internally, we've got these characteristics, we've got these traits, and we've got these tendencies. And we live the lives that we do.
Right.
But how, if we lived a different life, in a parallel, in a mirror universe, how would those traits have manifested? Would they have been subdued? Would they have been even grown stronger? Would our positive traits be even more positive? Would our negative traits just have taken over? But I just like it because it's inherent. It's taking these inherent characteristics of the characters, of the people, and let's say we'll expound on some of these traits and see how they look different. Just like we were talking about Odo, right? Because Odo, he loves order, and that's so important to him. And how did it manifest itself in the mirror universe? Yeah.
And I think you see that, right? In every mirror character that we see in this episode has traits and tendency and characteristics of their counterparts in the Prime universe, which
Yeah.
makes sense, right? Like you think about it, it's these characters, while it's a mirror or an alternate universe, it's still at the core that character, right? Almost like it's that there's the soul of that character is still there.
Yeah.
Um, the scientists in real life, I think I've read some fascinating articles on this. They postulate that there could actually be an infinite number of alternate realities, alternate universes based on with each of us in there, but they would be, let's say, okay, you decide that you're going to go study in this college instead of this one, but then one variation is in this alternate universe you went to this college instead of this one. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
every little decision could create some type of fork or some type of branch off to a completely separate timeline and or parallel universe or whatever you want to
Mhm.
call it that would be different because of the decisions you made. Whether they're right, who the heck knows? I mean, I personally don't believe that. I think there's only one of me. There's only one of you, Chris.
Yeah.
We're all unique, right? I don't think there's multiple Zachs running around different universes, but anyway, that's what I believe. So yeah, this concept that we've been looking at with the mirror episodes really makes you think about the possibilities and what could be or could have been had the slightest thing been different.
Yeah.
So, and that's where O'Brien's, his speech or his little quote really got me thinking pretty heavily about that. Like, well, what if
Yeah.
I would have done this instead of this? Or what if I would have studied this instead of this? Or what if I would have chose this job instead of that job? And really got me thinking about that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a beautiful like moment that O'Brien had for sure. The best moment in the episode for us.
I would expect nothing less from my favorite character, O'Brien, than that. But yeah, I mean, there's a really good handful of Mirror Universe episodes in DS9. I think DS9 really flushed out this Mirror Universe
Mhm.
better than the other shows because it gave it the most weight, the most
Yeah.
episodes. And so we really had a chance to dive into that. And obviously we're going to look forward to getting into those other episodes down the road as we jump back and forth between our Prime universe and the Mirror universe as we do our spotlights every so often. I know we have a lot of stuff coming down the pipe. We're going to have Erica LaRose back on with us from Shuttlepod Show to kind of give us an update and talk about how things are going and what she's learned about herself doing the show and her acting career and what she's been up to and all that kind of stuff. We're looking forward to that. We're having Matt Williams, the legendary Hollywood producer and show creator, on with us coming soon, December. Well, we're going to record with him December 8th, but his episode will be out December 10th. And I can't wait for that. That'll be a blast. We have a lot of stuff coming down. We'll eventually get back to these Mirror Universe episodes. We'll throw them in throughout. But I like the point you made, Chris, about going back now and being able just watching these Mirror Universe episodes from DS9 really allows you to focus on what's happening across those episodes.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to seeing them again. It's going to be an enjoyable arc for me to experience and just see these particular characters in this light is wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. I think so too. And I think we hit on this before when we had a visitor on with us. If you haven't watched that or listened to that episode, what the heck are you doing? Hurry up, listen to it and watch it because it's great. We had an absolutely wonderful time with Nana. It was really great learning about her and her career and her life and her family, and it was just awesome. But one of the things I had asked her was about this idea of playing all these iterations of Kira. Right? There was the freedom fighter Kira, the
Mhm.
kind of the Kira we know day to day in the DS9 show. There was the Intendant. There was the James Bond kind of version from the
Yeah.
Dr. Bashir, I presume, a holodeck novel. There was, yeah, I think I already said the Intendant. There were several iterations of Kira that we got to see and know, and just how much of a blast that would have been being able to play several iterations of that character and being able to really kind of stretch your acting abilities across those characters.
Yeah. I know. So cool. So
Yeah,
so cool.
that would have been great. But yeah, this was a fun episode, Chris. I enjoyed this. Definitely had some things in here to think about some lines that maybe go, yeah, let me ponder that for a few minutes, in particular. But the Mirror Universe is exciting. There's a lot more spotlight episodes of the Mirror Universe to come, so stay tuned for that. We look forward to diving through not only through the DS9 ones, but then looking at that two-parter in Enterprise, and then eventually talking about seeing the Terran Empire and the Mirror Universe pop back up in Discovery as well. And it's interesting, Chris, as we're doing this and going through and kind of following all these Mirror Universe events in a focused fashion, it's really cool to see all the ripple effects of these crossovers, right? Of people
Yeah.
coming from the Prime to the Mirror, and then there's even in some of the DS9 episodes crossover from the Mirror into the Prime.
Yeah.
So being able to kind of see this back and forth and everything and watch it as it all kind of unfolds over the period of several episodes and different series should be a ton of fun.
It will be. Maybe we should talk about when we get through our. We could talk about our favorite. Which one's our favorite Mirror
Yeah.
Universe episode? Yeah.
That would be a great idea. Yeah, I think that would be good because there's a lot to choose from. A lot
Yeah.
of really good ones, and that should be fun to discuss. I'm kind of leaning towards one already, but it'd be one that would surprise you, actually.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe not one you were thinking of. So, anyways, yeah. Well,
Nice.
that's it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening and watching all over the interwebs and the globe. As always, we very much appreciate it, don't we, Chris?
Absolutely, absolutely. And should anyone be from Antarctica, please let us know. That would make us thrilled. Yeah.
Yeah. Send us some fish.
Yeah.
Frozen, please, so it doesn't go bad by the time it gets to us. Yeah, that's true. That would be great. But yeah, we do very much appreciate you joining us and watching us and listening to us all over. Be sure to hit the like, subscribe button if you're on YouTube, so you can get the latest up-to-date information there and all the guest interviews we have. We have a ton, Chris, of guest interviews coming up over the next several months, don't we?
Yeah, we're gonna learn a lot. It's gonna be a ton of fun. Yeah, totally. I am excited, and I'm sure our audience is gonna be excited too. And a lot of these have to do with world building of these worlds we
Yeah.
love. So yeah, it's gonna be
Yeah,
really
and
incredible.
it's going to be a great mix across a variety of different positions or jobs within the industry.
Mhm.
So we really get an opportunity to kind of just see how all the puzzle pieces fit together, how different people's jobs affect projects and everything, and it's going to be a blast. We're really looking forward to it. We can't wait to share it all with you. As soon as we do, we will make those announcements. We've already made the announcement for Matt Williams. We'll be making the announcement at the time of this recording. The announcement for Erica should already be out as well. So we will continue to announce those as we get them. So that's why you have to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications on YouTube, follow us on whatever your podcast platform is, Spotify, Apple, Google, I'll fill in the blank. And also on our social media pages. Be sure to go on to Facebook and Instagram. Check us out there because that's typically where you're going to see the very initial announcements for episodes and celebrity guests. It's all right there. You got to go check it out. So be sure to follow us there to get the latest and greatest. But with that being said, thank you again, as always. Good to see you, my friend, as always.
Great to see
And
you.
look forward to chatting with you some more. But until next time, take care, and we'll catch you right here on the Random Redshirt Podcast.